Hello, everyone. My name is Jared Altick, and I'm a chaplain with the police department. The Hey Chaplain podcast brings you stories and wisdom about life in law enforcement, giving support and encouragement to those who wear the badge. Law enforcement provides lots of opportunities for continuing education and really interesting and diverse training. But sometimes an officer also gets a special chance to participate in a rare career-defining opportunity. Today, I am talking to Jonathon Westbrook, a police officer in Kansas City, Kansas, who was selected to be a White House Fellow. The White House Fellows program is one of the most prestigious programs for leadership and public service in the country, where young people, usually in their early 30s, are selected to work for 1 year alongside White House staff, cabinet secretaries, and other top-ranking government officials. The selection process is extremely competitive, and over the last 50-plus years, former White House Fellows have risen to the highest levels of military service, government, and private industry. Becoming a White House Fellow would be the most notable item on just about anybody's resume. But today, I want you to hear Jonathon's humility and heart for service. Listen for the different ways that he contributed to the betterment of his department as a police officer and the unique paths his law enforcement career has gone. I hope Jonathon's example encourages you to think outside the box about the ways that you can improve yourself and improve your community as a law enforcement officer. Here's Jonathon Westbrook. Hello, Jonathon. How are you?
I'm doing well.
It's good to have you here. I'm glad you're here, and welcome back to town. Glad that you've made it back from Washington.
Yeah, I'm happy to be back. I'm going to miss the D.C. experience. The East Coast is full of so many experiences in regards to being able to bounce around from city to city, whether it be Baltimore, New York City. You've got the ocean 2 hours away. You've got the mountains another 2 hours away. You've got caves and just a plethora of nationalities as well. Food, I gained a few pounds. I've lost a few pounds.
Everything's denser and closer together on the East Coast.
Yes.
Yeah, out here you have hours drive between cities.
Yeah.
And so people don't appreciate the distances out here.
Yeah. I feel like a official Easterner in a way, using the transit system, hopping on the subway or taking a bus or riding a bike and all those cool things to get around from point A to point B. That again, here you just hop in your car and you drive.
Yeah.
And so driving out there is quite the experience. Parking.
I can't imagine.
You'll pay your car note and parking expenses within the same month, and so
that's awesome.
Happy to be back, and looking forward to what the Lord has for me. Moving forward.
That's awesome. So tell me a little bit about your background, like your law enforcement career up to this point. So
I started out as a cadet at 20 years old. I did my time there, got into the academy class. Went through that rigorous training, and then I've had the opportunity to serve in almost every division for at least a year. I think the only division I didn't serve in for a full year would be South Patrol. After that time, there was an opening for the OK Youth Mentoring Program. I applied for that, and I was selected for that. Spent 2 years in that position.
Now, what does that do?
So the OK Youth Mentoring Program OK stands for Our Kids, and it's a national mentoring program. So there's chapters all throughout the nation where an African-American officer works with African-American youth in the middle and high school. And the goal is to bring in the religious community, business community, of course the schools, and men of color to come in and bridge that gap, number one, between law enforcement and the African-American males, just because that tends to be our number one, I don't want to say client, but the folks that we engage with the most. And so throughout the last few years, we've seen that. We've seen these altercations between officers and African-American men. And to address that relationship, the OK program does its best to make good first impressions with the young men. In the middle and high school when they're still yet teachable, and there may be some interest. I know that me as a kid, I had there was a police officer that attended my church, and so he'd come by in his police car, and so all the kids would run out because there's this excitement. And now as an adult, you see a police car, and you're you're going the other way. And so the program, it really is just built on building trust between officers and the youth, and then also bringing in and bridging that gap and filling in those holes that have been made throughout what we've seen through social media, on the news, and throughout history. I have two grandmothers who I won't say they were excited for me to go into law enforcement, but they're both 90 years old, and so they've seen a lot.
Yeah.
They experienced Jim Crow firsthand, Jim Crow laws.
Yeah.
And so, again, there's a lot of hurt and pain that has to be addressed, and it is being addressed. There's a lot of healing there, but this program is very, very specific in addressing those issues. And how do we?
Did you do that?
2 years.
2 years.
Just about 2 years. And in that program, we talked about not only just the issues of policing relationships, but how, hey, let's say we're talking about interviewing skills. Let's talk about life skills, leadership skills. Hey, making your bed first thing in the morning. Ironing your clothes, and how do you take better care of yourself as an individual? Showering. Boys stink sometimes.
Yeah.
So, hopping in
some dad work.
Yeah. And so, just having that male role model, I think that's an area that affects all races, is the lack of male leadership in the home. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I think across all races, a male presence in the home is lacking. Yes. And so this program was designed to not be a father, but have an officer that can bring in men to be that male role model to the young men in the community. And so it spilled over into not only African-American males, but the Latino community, the white community. I mean, it ended up being that 2-year time spent in that program was amazing, and seeing those effects. And so those young men that would usually fight, I used to tell them, before you fight, give me a call. And they actually did that. Or same thing at the homes where parents were having issues. If a young man ran away, being able to go out and with another man from the community and find that child and bring them back home and have a conversation with them. And so that was an amazing experience running that program.
That's awesome. What'd you do after that?
So went to the chief's office where I was the CALIA accreditation manager. And
what does that mean? So
CALIA is a sort of I'm trying to use layman's terms here, but pretty much our standards and the way that we operate. I will brag on Kansas City, Kansas Police Department for a second here. After working in Washington, D.C. and having interactions with agencies across the country, I can say that our policies, the way that we carry out business on the books, is far above what we see across the nation still. And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done when it comes to our policy and how officers engage, whether it be in the use of force,
right,
whether it be in the community policing. The CALIA sets these standards that we meet and we try to exceed. And so just best practices for our police department. And so making sure that our policies are meeting and exceeding these standards. And that was really interesting work because, again, you get a chance to see what other agencies are doing, what's worked, what's failed, what not to do.
Yeah, right.
And again, best practices in regards to serving the community ultimately. So that was an amazing opportunity as well. And doing the research, finding out how to, whether it be de-escalation techniques, whether it be how do we lower our police pursuits. How do we safely bring police pursuits to an end? Bad guys will run.
Yeah.
And so how do we bring that to an end where you don't have innocent people coming home from school or work getting caught up in bad behavior? So that again, just great work with the CALIA accreditation, and then working in the chief's office, getting a chance to engage and interact with with the media, making sure that we are being as transparent as possible, legally possible, and establishing
that's where I first met you.
Yeah.
As a public information officer, where you were doing that kind of work, and one time you called me at like 4 a.m. on a Sunday morning, hey, we have a death notification, that kind of thing, and so having the opportunity to do that as well. Again, people want to know. I mean, we've moved from I think society in general has moved where things were okay to be siloed and not so much anymore. Folks want to know what's going on. Right.
And so how do we address that without jeopardizing a case? Because those things will be used against you if you throw names out there too early or you throw details out there too early. And I think that also builds that trust and relationship with the community. So a very, very vital role as far as public information officer is concerned as well. So Been blessed to have several roles even in that office there.
Excellent. So you go from that, you're working in the chief's office, you're a uniformed officer, you're going through your law enforcement career. But then how did you get involved with the White House Fellowship Program? How did that even get on your radar? How did that start?
Awesome question. So as I'm sitting here thinking about it, so throughout I've been on for 14 years, I have been blessed with the opportunity to get my associate's, bachelor's, and master's degree.
Wow.
And so it was during the pursuit of my master's degree at the great University of Kansas.
Rock chalk.
Yeah, I give them a lot of credit because they took all my money. But we had a professor, Reggie Robinson. Okay. He was a White House fellow, great professor. And he spoke about his time working for Janet Reno, working for her directly, and in the administration, the things that he was exposed to during his years as a White House fellow. So it was our very last class, and I said, well, if you don't mind, just sitting with me for half an hour and explain more to me about this program. And so he explained this program to me. My first attempt to apply to the program was probably in 2018, 2017. The application process is long. We're talking about digging in, because ultimately you're going to be working at the White House, so they're going to be digging.
Right. Yeah.
So you got to provide everything, and so I got maybe halfway through the application process, but the deadline hit, and so wasn't able to get the application in all the way, and I just tabled that. And then I had several classmates from KU reach out to me about a year or two later saying, hey, there's this program we think you would be great for. You should look into it. And I said, well, you know what? I did try it that first time. Let me try it again. And so went through the application process. I called up Reggie and said, hey, I'm gonna do this. And he gave me some advice in regards to navigating the interviews, navigating the application. Gave me some just really good wisdom on navigating that process, because the application process itself is a journey. And so I submitted everything. I submitted my videos, and this is when COVID's really kind of coming into play.
Right.
And so everything was done via Zoom. So the interviews, the whole process was just done through Zoom. And unfortunately, I reached out to Reggie when I got an email saying that I made it to the finals. Okay. And so I reached out to Reggie, and he didn't call me back, not knowing that he was sick. I don't know the background behind his illness, but he passed away about a month or so after I got the acceptance call to the fellowship. And so I owe a lot to Reggie in regards to his mentorship. Not only his teaching and his mentorship, and he's also, again, he's an alumni of the association, and now I'm officially an alumni of the association, and I wasn't able to share that joy with him, but I thank God for allowing our paths to cross at KU.
Yeah. So you go through this application process, the interviews and everything else. At what point do you tell the department? Because this means moving from Kansas City to Washington, D.C. and working in the White House, very prestigious. Only a handful are selected each year to do this. How do you tell your boss, oh, by the way, I'm going to be gone for a year? How does that even, what does that look like?
Well, not even the boss. Let's talk about your family first. Well, it's funny because I applied and I want to say it was November, and there's just so many dates rolling through my head. But let's just say I applied in let's say October, November. The deadline hits, and I don't hear anything for several months. I'm just thinking I didn't get through. Nothing happened. Again, thousands of people apply for this. Up to 20 positions, and I just didn't make it through. Again, in my mind, I'm just a cop from Kansas City. I'm in the middle of the country. Yeah. I'm sure you have more prestigious people, more accomplished people applying outside of me, and I'm not thinking anything of it. And so I get an email, I want to say in January, saying, "Hey, you've made it to the regionals." And so I let my family know, like, "Hey, apparently I've made it through." And so we spent literally 2 days from first thing in the morning to about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Zooming. Friday and Saturday, we Zoomed all day, and didn't hear anything else. Hey, you guys, thanks for this awesome experience.
Yeah.
And so it's like a month or two later, and hey, you made it to the finals. Oh, wow. Let me start letting folks know that this thing is kind of moving along. I didn't think anything of it. And so did the finals, and then it was I may not be using the correct terminology, but there came a moment where I'm like, I'm actually going to get this. This is
Yeah.
So it was a shock to me, but then it was letting the family know, like, hey, how do you guys feel about this? Like, this may actually happen. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity, and how do what does this look like for us? That the ambitious and selfish side of me was like, I'm not passing this up.
Right.
and so I really did pray about it. I prayed quite a bit and sought the advice and wisdom of men who are older than me, who've gone through these journeys before, and with the agreeance of the family, and reached out to the deputy chief and the White House Fellowship Program is an education. So, I mean, it's all about education.
Okay.
You get the opportunity to engage in things, but there's an educational component, reports, and things of that nature that are all doing it. And so it qualified as educational leave. Okay. And so the chiefs...
this would be like you leaving to pursue an advanced degree.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the chief agreed. The FOP was... between the FOP and the chief, there was an agreement, so allowed him to leave for a year, so a year leave of absence from the department. And you rent a U-Haul truck, and you load up your house and your family, and you go to D.C.
That's incredible. Let's say you're going to pick up and move for a program like this, or to do an advanced degree, and you're gonna leave. You're gonna go to another city, but your family is established. I mean, you've got a rhythm to life and that kind of thing. Any advice on how do you help family members get through that adjustment?
I want to replicate as much as what we had here there, and so it wasn't renting an apartment. We're gonna rent a house.
Okay,
and it's going to have a backyard like we've got a backyard, and we're going to make sure that they're in school. And if my wife is wanting to work, are you wanting to, is going to be okay for you to leave? And teachers and my wife's a teacher, and so teaching is in high demand, I think, everywhere. Yeah, kind of like police, police officers. Yeah. And so it's interesting how God, and I'm quick to give God the glory on how He will provide. I want to say it was like the second or third day. There was a placement week where they flew us up there to Washington to interview with different offices within the executive branch. And as I was doing my interviews with those different offices, she was offered a job within like a day or two of being there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay. And it paid more. And so, but of course the cost of living is higher there.
Right. Right.
But I mean, just replicate what we had here, there, as much as possible. And so that worked for us in regards to, again, my thing was I want them to experience as much as possible. I mean, because honestly, we don't travel outside of our cities unless it's the summertime.
Right.
And it's just for brief moments. And so I want to give them the best home experience, yet you're in a different place. You're a different part of the country. You're going to see things and hear things and do things that most folks won't have the opportunity to engage in, not until they're older, much older. But,
Sure.
These young kids had an opportunity to see and do a lot of cool things.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So that'd be my advice. Just, replicating, making it as comfortable as possible, and trying to address the concerns as they come. I'll tell you, if I don't have an answer, I don't know. But we can work on it. So let's find an answer.
So you get to Washington. Where did you end up being placed?
So I was placed with the Office of American Innovation and Domestic Policy Council. And so I was working, again, in the executive branch. They wanted to use, because this was just in the aftermath of George Floyd. And so they wanted an officer in the office working with them that could kind of guide things that have already been written. I mean, there's a lengthy process on executive orders and all the policy that comes out of there. I mean, a lot of that stuff has been in works for a year, if not even more.
And what does that office do?
So the Domestic Policy Council, if the president's agenda in regards to whether it be just anything domestically, so whether that be energy, and in this case would be policing, the Department of Justice, it helps guide funding and guide the direction of these federal agencies. Okay. And so for me, they kept me in that police wheelhouse. The other big thing that we worked on was the mental health. How do we begin to bring in the co-responders? What funding can we find for co-responders? And what does that how do we build that out and set a template for agencies across the country to bring in co-responders, address the mental health concerns? Because I know, in my short time with law enforcement, I believe there's a time before where if you were having a crisis moment, officers would put handcuffs on you and take you down to the county jail.
Yeah.
And that was that.
Yeah. Kind of a one-size-fits-all solution.
Yeah. Whereas now, officers are being trained to identify a person in crisis, be able to note what that is. And there's this whole new form of addressing those issues in the community. And so, again, the Domestic Policy Council brings in all these folks, all these smarter folks than me, brings them in to, put in their 2 cents and build out these reports and guidance for the country to implement. And so,
reports that go, I suppose, to multiple cabinet members.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's something like mental health. I mean, you've got folks from Department of Justice, Housing, Urban Development. Like you'll have Department of Agriculture in there. Like you'll have just all these departments where you're like, what does agriculture have to do with mental health? But there is a piece that they have to play in that.
Sure.
And so whether it's addressing the health aspect of the mental health piece, whether it's food, funding, how do we where do we house these folks? And so you'll be in a room with all these representatives from almost every cabinet. And they're in the room, and we're trying to figure out how do we build up this piece that addresses holistically the issues of mental health and policing.
Now, your fellowship is interesting because it actually spanned 2 different administrations. Surely that changes things to some degree. What was that like?
Crazy. So I was assigned to the office of, the Domestic Policy Council, Office of American Innovation, which was really cool too because they're looking at ways to modernize federal government. There's the old way of pushing paper across the table. You sign here. Federal government's this huge machine, just huge, and it's a little dated. And we're trying to find ways. And I think every administration, they'll rename offices, but they're all trying to figure out how do we modernize and take advantage of all this new technology to communicate with each other. Because I think one of the issues that I saw, and I think you see it even in local governments, is everyone tends to hop in their silos and there's not communication between. And we're working on the same thing, or you have what I have. Right. And if we were to come together, the problem, at least we'd be one step closer to the solution. Whereas, again, folks are siloed. And then I also worked at the Small Business Administration, which became the tip of the spear when it came to the PPP loans. And so I had I also office out of that agency as well. So when it comes to the transition, when I signed up when I applied, I didn't think about it being an election year.
Right.
I didn't think about there being a pandemic. And then the other issue of you couldn't be any more black and white when it comes to the 2 different administrations. Yeah. And so you throw in the events of January 6th. I've never been, again, being in law enforcement is one thing when you're the guy out there guiding traffic. Right. But one morning on my way to work, I mean, they literally have the fences and the street barriers, and there's National Guard with their rifles slung, and they're checking IDs for you to go park your car. Yeah. Never experienced anything like that. The closest thing I've seen like that would be when I went on a missions trip to Guatemala, where they have police officers on every other block just because of the crime that's there. Sure. And so you throw all that stuff in there, and again, you have these 2 administrations that couldn't be any more opposed. Just very, very big learning experience, and it's hard to really quantify or put into words what I learned at this moment, because I'm still processing this whole year. But I think ultimately, at the end of the day, getting a chance to work with both administrations and see the hard work and sweat and tears that goes in to trying to advance America. Right. I mean, this is still one big project in a way. Yeah. Some guys hopped on some ships. The big experiments. The guys hopped on some ships. We're going to try this brand new thing, and in a way, it's still kind of this brand new thing where we're trying to figure things out. And of course, we've dropped the ball in a lot of areas, but we've made progress in a lot of areas. And I will say, even in the midst of our failings as a country, I'd much rather be here than anywhere else.
Right. So the Biden administration, like any new administration, inherited a bunch of White House fellows. Mm-hmm. Did you all stay in the same places?
So we moved around a little bit.
Okay.
So some of us took advantage. Some of us, spent the first few months of our fellowship in this office, figure out, we really don't like this, or we saw something else that we wanted. I was moved from the Domestic Policy Council over to the Office of Public Engagement. I still kept my office over at the SBA. And I will say that it was actually pretty cool getting a chance to work in a different office and seeing how the White House engages the country. Yeah. How it engages these, I don't want to call them special interest groups, but whether it be the CEOs of all the major credit card companies, sitting on a Zoom call with all the CEOs of major credit card companies, or the auto industry execs. Right. It was kind of cool. I sat on the Zoom call with Elon Musk. Oh, yeah. And so I'm feeling really cool because I'm on this Zoom call with Elon Musk. And then we end up traveling to Texas, to Brownsville, Texas, where Tesla, or, they got the SpaceX. And ended up meeting Elon Musk in person. So that was really cool.
That's neat. Yeah.
And so getting a chance to experience that piece and how the White House just engages with the communities and how all those concerns and interests of the country funnel into the White House, and then how it's divvied out and how do we work on those things. And so that was really cool as well. So got a chance to work on and advise on policy when it comes to policing, which is my wheelhouse. But then I got put in the position where almost like a PIO in a way, but just a PIO on a larger scale.
Right.
And then with the Small Business Administration, seeing how they were processing, you've got all these small businesses that are struggling. The COVID comes in and just shuts down the entire country. And, how do we stop the economy from just falling out? And so you've got these funds that have now been allocated to small businesses and entrepreneurs, and how do we rebuild what was pretty much just kind of wiped out? And so seeing all these things firsthand, in addition to all the other things that were going on. Right. Really cool experience.
So other than meeting the billionaire who wants to go to Mars, what was your most interesting experience or best takeaway, maybe, from your year in Washington?
It's hard. I would say my biggest takeaway would be the humanity behind all of these people. We see them on television. We see them in our social media feeds. We hear them. They are these leaders. They're the top of the cream of the crop. But in those off the record moments, you see the humanity, and
they're not just cartoon villains.
Yeah. And I want to say, it's been said several times before, but we had the opportunity to meet with President Biden, and he said. And two, again, I'm not trying to promote either one or two, but he made a good comment. He says, it's hard to hate someone that you know. Yeah. And so having the opportunity to get to know these folks, again, whether you're left or right, you get a chance to talk with them, and they explain why, where they came from, why they believe what they believe. And again, it may be totally opposed to, how you think. Sure. But it brings in the humanity of the thing, of the situation. And so I'd say one of the biggest takeaways is, again, just seeing the humanity and just, these are just average folks. I won't say average folks. These are just normal people trying to do their best to, again, advance, make our country better. And so I think we lose that when we watch our news stations. Again, we villainize, one station, this guy is the Antichrist, and the next station, he's the savior. And
and everything's so polarized, so tribal. We're like, it's my team against the other team, and it's usually more nuanced than that. Yeah. And so,
And the opportunity to speak with, some of the representatives and senators and longtime political figures there in D.C., and how outside of what we see on the news, how much camaraderie there really is still there. It's not what it used to be, but there's a lot of camaraderie between Republicans and Democrats behind the scenes. I mean, because you have to. If you want to advance anything, you're going to have to work with the person you don't necessarily agree with. And so seeing that in action and hearing these stories, and that was encouraging. It gave me some light at the end of the tunnel. Good. And one of my better takeaways from this whole experience.
Excellent. What or how do you think this will affect your law enforcement career going forward?
So I would say having the opportunity. I mean, our police department does have good and great leaders. We've got folks that encourage, that pour themselves into, see the potential, will challenge and make you rise up. If you want that, I put the caveat out there. If that's what you want, then you can get that. Having the opportunity to see how my principal, the person I'm working for directly, seeing how he and she, because I had several during my time, but seeing how they were able to manage multiple crises, or is it crisis? Crises?
Yeah, crises.
Crises.
Yeah.
Like literally, I mean, people are going to lose their home tomorrow if we don't get this money out there to them, or this department's not going to get the funding that they need. I mean, these are decisions and are just as natural catastrophes are going on. How do we make sure that we get the resources where they need to go? And the federal response. And so watching these people, how are they able to journey through the decision making? I think I've taken away quite a bit from that. Is now I am a sergeant, and how do I now engage? And then the thing is, how do you bring in your troops, your staff, and how do you encourage them and keep them on one accord and address their needs, because they're also going through things. I mean, everyone's got something going on outside of work.
Yeah, just like you saw in government. I mean, it's not like all police officers are the same.
Yeah,
they're wildly different in personality, in politics, and whatever else. And so, same thing. You're gonna have to work together and get along if you're going to solve the problems.
I'd say watching that in action. I mean, there's books written on how to build up your team. There are TED Talks and this and that, but it's one thing to hear and read it, but when you're actually seeing it and you're seeing how, you're seeing how these principals, how these leaders are able to just engage their staff and build them up to get the job done. I'd say that's another one of my takeaways. And just being flexible, and sometimes laying down your own bias, your own personality, and again, meeting people where they are and bringing them up and building them up, and hey, let's get this job done.
Yeah.
And afterwards, let's go grab something to eat. You know?
Yeah.
So
I mean, solve problems and be civil to one another.
Yeah.
And that's good. That's good. So tell me, do you have any goals in law enforcement where you'd like to see yourself, moving forward, ambitions, things that you would like to do as a cop?
I can say my 9-year-old daughter said, I like to ask the kids, what do you want to do? I ask them every couple of months, just what are you thinking about doing? And the answer changes every once in a while. And so her answer had changed. She said that she wanted to be a leader. She said that she wanted to be the president of the United States. I said, cool. And I think I had something to do with that. But then she turned around and asked me, hey, Dad, what do you want to do? And I said, sweetheart, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. At 35 years old, I've been blessed with, again, a great education, lots of experiences. But the thing about the fellowship, I made the assumption the fellowship was going to be the bridge to something bigger. Mm-hmm. And it is if I was to pursue that. But I think in this last year, the water got so just, it muddled my waters, where I don't necessarily have a clear vision for, I'm going to do this next year. In 3 years, I'm going to do this in 5 years. I mean, I'm still processing this last year. And so it's more or less a thing of, all right, Lord, you've given me this opportunity of a lifetime. I've been blessed with these awesome connections. I've been blessed with this awesome experience. What do I do with it now? Yeah. And so, as we said earlier, if you want to make God laugh, make some plans.
Exactly.
And he'll
so
have
no plans to run for president.
No,
right
no.
Away.
You know what?
Right.
We were joking. I said, anyone who wants that job, you're out of your mind. I don't. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, if anything, my heart truly is to serve. And being blessed with that opportunity to serve as a police officer for well over a decade now here in Kansas City, Kansas, has been one of the most fulfilling things to happen for me. And so as long as I'm in service, in that mode of serving people, getting people what they need, getting the resources that they need, and them building up. It's one thing just to give things out, but how do we build people up? Yeah. And so whether it be in law enforcement, working on that, or some of the other things that I'm engaged with, community, I'm a part of several different community groups where we're working on building up the Northeast part of KCK. Mm-hmm. How do we, bring in the resources and the services that the Latino community needs? Work. So I'm part of an organization there as well. How do we make sure things are equitable when it comes to resources and how they're spread throughout the community? And so I'm part of an organization there. And then with the state, I'm a commissioner with the African American Affairs Commission. And so how do I make sure that the voices of those in the district that I serve and represent are being, presented to the governor? So again, those are the areas that I've been blessed to be in. And I enjoy that.
Yeah.
Don't make a lot of money off of any of that stuff, but that's what I enjoy. And so it's not about the money. It's about really living and walking in the purpose I believe that God has me in right now, and the season that He has me in right now. So I'm enjoying that. I know that I'm really looking forward to getting back into that after this last year of learning how it's done at the federal level.
Right. Well, God bless you, Jonathon. Thank you for coming in and talking to me. But thank you also for coming back to Kansas City and taking up those sergeant stripes and being willing to serve in your community. It's an honorable thing, and we're thankful for your service.
It's been an honor and a blessing, and thank you. Thank you for what you're doing, being a voice of morality and conscience in an environment that we don't see those things being practiced in very much, unfortunately. I think folks tend to forget that in law enforcement, you see so much negative. And so to have a voice of clarity, reason, morality, and a conscience come in and speak, those seeds are being sown. And we may not see the fruit right away. Some plants take some seeds take a little longer to sprout than others, but the seeds have been sown. And they're going to grow. They're going to grow. So thank you.
Thank you, Jonathon. As a police chaplain, I try to steer clear of anything too politically partisan. But if Jonathon Westbrook ran for office tomorrow, any office, I'm voting for him. Jonathon is talented, humble, well-educated, and a man of faith and principle. A guy like him could easily have stayed in Washington and cashed in career-wise, but instead he chose to come back to Kansas City and take up the role as a patrol sergeant. In my eyes, that humility and loyalty makes him all the more impressive. Though working patrol isn't as glamorous as working in the White House, I'm sure that both experiences will contribute to Jonathon's leadership ability and perspective. Hopefully someday I'll give you an update that Sergeant Westbrook has been elected governor or senator. In the meantime, know that a good man is serving his city among other men and women of good character. If you like what you heard here, please share this episode with a cop or someone who loves a cop. On the next episode of Hey Chaplain.
That's when I started to consider it and start to talk to some people. I talked obviously with, my wife and family members and some other people that I knew that had helped get some people elected, even, to Congress and so forth. And I tried to go into it with my eyes wide open.
Right.
And I think I did, but it's still, a lot of work, because after all of that comes then you have to figure out how you're going to raise money if you're not independently wealthy, and I'm not.
The views expressed here are the personal views of the hosts and our guests and do not necessarily represent the views of any law enforcement agency or its components. Thank you for listening today, and as always, pray for peace in our city.